tell you what.
All right, what's up, everyone? I'm Nathan. Welcome to the Retic Lounge. A little quiet this week. You'll see that Lucas isn't joining us. He's a little under the weather. I dealt with some family stuff, so this even got pushed back a day. I'm really thankful for our guest tonight for being so flexible. But this guest, another one that I've been waiting to have on for a long time. This is a good buddy of mine that I kind of grew up with in Retics. This is G.I. Joe. He is the person who did my first pairing with. He was out in Korea while he was serving with the Army, and I took one of his males and bred it to my favorite female. So just excited to have him on, talk a little bit about sales. This is a subject that, isn't talked a ton about in the reptile industry, and people just getting into it can definitely use some insights and what would make them a better salesman, what's going to get those snakes moving. So without further ado, let's add Joe to the stage. Welcome on in, buddy.
Whether you've poured your heart and soul into your reptile business or you've just begun your business journey, AE Foundry has you covered with next level expertise in graphic design, motion graphics, videography, photography, and so much more. If you've been dying for a new logo for your reptile business, motion graphics for your current logo, a new website, or need assistance making your video podcast come to life, then listen carefully. AE Foundry's mission places storytelling at its core. AE Foundry believes that a distinctive story and background are the driving forces that set your brand apart. In today's market, consumers seek more than just products. They crave a connection built on trust with the brands they cherish. AE Foundry is committed to empowering small businesses and fostering authenticity that resonates with their consumers. Reach out to them and let them help you craft a visual narrative that helps establish a genuine and lasting connection with your audience. To contact AE Foundry, email them at aromero@aefoundry.com or on Instagram @AEFoundry. When it comes to housing your retics, trust me, you're going to want an enclosure that will be just as strong and durable as your reticulated python. The Heartland Reptile Enclosure is next level tough and will outlive you and your retic by several generations. Heartland Reptile Enclosures are designed and manufactured out of powder-coated aluminum to provide the highest quality and longevity available in the reptile enclosure. What makes them even better is they are lighter than your PVC and plastic enclosures out there and are extremely tough. Stop playing around with plastic enclosures for your large constrictors and step up your enclosure game with the Heartland Reptile Enclosure. To inquire about one of these enclosures, speak to Jordan himself at Heartland Reptiles on Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok. Here on TRL, we preach about the importance of using hooks, feeding tongs, and other tools with your reticulated python all the time. Animal Equipment by Stoney not only has all the tools you need for any snake you keep, but they have the absolute best hooks on the market. What sets Animal Equipment by Stoney's hooks apart from the other guys is their polycarbonate hook ends that provide a warm feel that won't disturb or bother your retic, ensuring a positive interaction from the get-go. Since 2008, AE Stoney has been supplying zoos, herpetologists, and other animal professionals with their tools. It's time for you to step your hook game up and buy an AE Stoney hook. To learn more and purchase one of their amazing products, visit aestoney.com.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Not much. Before we get going, hey guys, just want to let you know, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We got a cool little Discord going on with our Patreon group. So if you feel like jumping into the Retic Lounge Discord, go ahead, jump onto our Patreon at the Retic Lounge and join today. But Joe, what's been going on since I last talked to you? Because I feel like the last time I saw you was October Tinley in 22.
22, yeah. Man, well, obviously we're a year. That's been over a year and a half. Year and a half ago. So a lot's happened, but enjoying time out on the motorcycle since it's getting summer, and pushing sales and stuff, getting ready for Retic Fest as it's coming up in a couple weeks, and right behind the very next weekend is Schaumburg. So staying busy, man. That's what I do.
Definitely are. Schaumburg, and then Tinley's not far behind, so you guys got your hands full.
Yeah, it stays nonstop, stays constant.
That's good, though. Glad to see that you're staying busy over there. But let's just give everyone an introduction. I'm sure many people who are acquainted with retics, especially super dwarf and locality retics, are definitely acquainted with you at this point. But let's give them a little background on who is G.I. Joe.
Yeah, so I got started, I guess it was 2016. I bought my first snake that was a pet. I bought a ball python, mostly because the Army had chosen me to be a recruiter, and I could not find a place at the town that I had to be at that would let me have my dog. So my cousin was gracious.
Do you find that reptiles are kind of like a common pet within the armed forces just because of like care needs?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like I definitely know several people in the military that that look at it for that aspect of either A, in the barracks, they're pretty easy to hide, or right, like they don't have to be walked 3 times a day and taken out to poop and everything. It's even a small, something. I wouldn't necessarily say like retics, or I wouldn't have found that, but every now and again, definitely
that's
like
harder.
a ball python, or like a chameleon was, and your bearded dragon. Somebody would inevitably have it and stuff. So I've definitely seen it there.
Okay.
But
yeah, sorry to cut you off, but just I feel like that's kind of a theme I've seen a little bit with the Army.
For sure. For sure. But yeah, so I bought my first ball python and started just really getting in. I was like, man, this is, I like snakes, but I started going to shows, went, Pittsburgh, the Steel show or Steel City show, and then went down to Hamburg, and I was like, that's when I started like finding other, different species, and I was like, okay, I gotta try something else. So I was like, ball pythons, they're just not it. They're pretty, but they're a rock. So
they don't give you much back. That's for sure. That's kind of why I got out of them.
It's a pretty one-sided relationship, and I'm a two-way street kind of guy,
Yeah, I get that.
And so the next ones I got were some blood pythons, and those were cool. But again, that being just a terrestrial ground snake, they were always buried in their coconut. The only time you ever see them is if you either dig them out or, throw a rat in there. And it was cool to watch them come up and stuff and get the rat. But again, just wasn't it. And but I was getting on different, Facebook pages and stuff, and I think it was like the Retic Nation or something. It was one of the Retic pages, but Garrett had posted this tiny little Retic next to a chapstick tube.
The Burt's Bees.
Yep.
I know the picture you're talking about.
Yeah. So, I was in Maryland, stationed there. I was like, told him, I was like, hey man, it's a 2.5 hour drive. I was like, you mind if I just come get it versus, having you ship it to me? And that's what started it. And I just dove in headfirst from there.
So you have the infamous Retic next to the chapstick Retic.
I used to.
Okay.
He passed away unexpectedly. I think it was a bad feeder. I have his brother though. I do have his brother.
That's kind of cool for me. I feel like that's just an iconic,
it really is
back in the day.
So no, I had him, and but he unexpectedly passed away. We really didn't have a rhyme or reason for it, and the best thing I could come up with was maybe I just got a bad feeder. So it sucks, but like I said, I got his brother, and I have 3 of his sisters. So
okay,
that's kind of wild, but
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it started from there, and then, to talk to Garrett more, I'd come up, I'd volunteer to, work on projects and just kind of learn more about genetics. And I started teaching myself and figuring out the morphs and talking with everybody. And man, I got one of those. Sorry.
You're good.
But
yeah, you were going out to him to help with like impacted teeth from what I remember. And
yeah,
then
we did that one.
And then there was the species spotlight, which was kind of what everyone got introduced to you through, I feel like.
Yeah. Yep. So
how many Retics did you have at that point?
Man,
it was a pretty big collection, right?
I amassed a collection quick. I really did. I mean, it got to the point that I was coming up so often that Ashley would like look at me and be like, "Stop spending your money here." Like, she was like, "Go home. Stop." So stop. And I was like, "No, I'm addicted. I can't." So I ended up with a lot of, I ended up with quite a collection. I mean, and then I got told I had to go to Korea, and that was wild. And Garrett took a chunk of my collection, and then Matt and Becca down in Georgia took another chunk of it, the bigger chunk of it actually. So the fact that I'm even still in the game is really owed all to Matt and Becca, especially Becca, because then while I was in Korea, it was supposed to be a 1-year tour. I got in some trouble, and they extended me there for. I was there total almost 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And, Becca just kept it rolling, even because while I was there, Matt got deployed to Korea. And so she was holding it down with 2 kids and the dogs. And
she was under a lot of pressure. I mean, I remember just having to coordinate everything, shipping with her, and it was tough. She was under just a lot back then.
Yeah, she's a beast, man. She's a beast. I really do. I owe a big, the fact that I'm even still got a collection really is owed to her, because otherwise it's just one of the parts of the Army. I never thought I'd end up in Korea, and so.
Or for as long as you did.
Oh yeah, that part of it too. But that, like I said, it just is what that is. But I came back and got out, and Garrett was like, "Hey, if you ever get out, I want you to come be my salesman." I was like, "Okay, let's do it." So I showed up here, and I've been rolling ever since, and I've learned a lot. Been a little over 2 years, and I've learned a metric ton of everything about sales, and I think I've improved a lot. But
well, yeah, I mean, you're learning from a marketing wizard, so it's definitely a good place to kind of flourish in that environment.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, he brings a lot to the table. So, and then I put my own spin on it, and it works for both of us. We're both really good at what we do. But it's funny because him and I, like, it's like starting point, and he goes left and I go right. We have ultimately usually end up pretty close to the same point, but neither one of us likes to take each other's road to get there, So it's funny because he's always keeping me on edge, but then I'm always thinking of like ways to try and outdo him or bring something new, and so it makes it fun,
Yeah, stay a little bit of a step ahead.
That's it.
So you want to talk a little bit about like getting back from Korea and just kind of a background in your sales experience with Reach Out Reptiles? Everyone should know by this point we're talking about Garrett from Reach Out Reptiles. Joe has been working with them for the last 2 years since he got back from Korea. So you want to just kind of jump into where you started versus where you are now?
Yeah. So it was funny because I got back, and of course I get like transition leave. So I really wasn't officially out of the Army until 1 July. Right. So the whole time, like, I got back end of February, and I'm getting paid by the Army the whole time. So I was like, I'm going to take a really long vacation. Like, I had 100 and some days. I think it was like 128 days of paid vacation. And so I was like, I'm taking a long. And he was like, I want you here for March, Tinley. And I was like, all right. let's do it. So cut my vacation short, came to work instead, earned 2 paychecks, but it really kickstarted a lot. I'd worked at a 10 league before as a volunteer, so I kind of had an idea of how they worked. And I came in, and it was definitely a transition, getting out of the military and changing the way you talk with people. And I had zero sales experience other than being a recruiter. But I figure if I could put people in the Army and stuff, I ought to be able to sell something that people want. They're reaching out to me for it. So
I would hope so at that point. That's some pretty good sales experience right there.
I was like, I think I can make this work, and I did, and I have, and it's been a lot of fun. I had a blast when I came in and working with Rob. Him and I just great buddies. I love Rob to death, and we would have the most fun at work, just cracking up. And look back. Some of the best times were like on our Instagram when Abby was there and just catching all those, those candid moments. It was doing great. It was so much fun. And then I don't know. It's definitely, I've seen major improvements in the way that I do sales and I think about it. And I'm always trying to think, all right, like how can I improve customer service? How can I what am I doing wrong? Like I always self-assess if something doesn't go 100% right. Like, okay, what do I do next? What do I do better? And all those things, I just think, over time, if you don't see yourself improving, then you're obviously not self-assessing, because you should never feel comfortable being as, where you were at yesterday, in my opinion. It's the only way you're going to get better at this job and get better at doing something for the people that are wanting to literally spend their hard-earned money with you. Uncle Sam literally rapes them for taxes. And so what little bit they've got, I'm like, I want to make sure they have a good experience and get what they came for.
Oh, especially this whole last year and a half. I mean, it's talking someone out of, a night out or, some other plans that they may have had to be able to afford this animal. So yeah, you got to back it up and be able to sell what you got.
Oh, for sure. You're literally taking the last position that Garrett let go of, in the business. When he started it off, he did it all. And then slowly, he started letting people in. And this is literally the last thing that he let go of and stuff. And it took a while.
It takes a lot of trust in someone and representing their brand and their product. So that's understandable to me.
Oh, no, 100%. I mean, you look at it and stuff, the level that Josh put in, it's like everything that he's built, he's worked for, and he just handed me a phone with his entire clientele list, that takes some trust and stuff. And so, we've definitely grown, in the last 2 years, just exponentially in the way that we, work together. We figured out each other's quirks. And now, it's always just kind of building, or at least that's, what we're striving for every time. And I like it. I have a great time at work. I have a great time. Just when you get to match something up, so perfectly, and that's when I feel like, man, I had a successful day at work. That's when I know. So,
well, and I think, just going home, being able to know that you're working with something and in an industry that you're passionate about, it fills your cup a little bit. So, I mean, you get so many cool experiences beyond working with the animals, between the shows and all the traveling and excitement that happens around the shop. I mean, you mentioned before we started, we have Retic Fest just around the corner over there. So, I mean, you guys get to have some exciting experiences.
Oh yeah, it's a blast. So, but he's always pushing that envelope so it's bringing something new into the shop. Whether it's the museum we're working on or Karma's 23-foot, indoor cage. So,
yeah, there's cool stuff. But before we get into the ins and out of the sales customer service thing, I want to know what kind of started your passion with Retics and why do you like working with them to this day? Like, what keeps you around?
I mean, the passion started with that little one by the chapstick tube and coming, Garrett allowing me to come there. I don't know if he'd have shipped it, if it would have ignited this exact same fire. But when I look in his little, one car garage and seeing, like, okay, cool, man, this is awesome. Like I can see a scale. Like it gave something to look at, and with a vision,
that little
right?
bit of perspective and seeing how something runs like that is cool.
So that started it, and then the passion, Garrett definitely has for super dwarfs. I just jumped into it, and I still consider myself like very new. I mean, what, like 2017 was 2016 was it? No, it was, yeah, 2016, 2017 is when I bought my first.
Yeah, it was around the same time that we both jumped into it, from what I remember.
So, it's not that long ago. Like,
no.
And so, like, by no means, do I think I'm an expert, but what I do know is that the time, even in that time frame, the level of, I guess, care, understanding, being able to understand like the genetics and everything, and be able to put it passionately come across with that, and help people understand, where the value is. It's always funny because, I mean, I would say there's less than 10 people in the United States that do what I do, right? And in terms of like this specific job of selling snakes as a full, where this is their full time. I said there's less than 10 people. So it's not a relatable job. And it's funny, every time I was just at, my girlfriend's friend's graduation party, right? Her family. And they're like, so Joe, what do you do? And I'm like, I breed and sell exotic snakes. And they're like, you do what? And then they're like, there's a market for that. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's a huge market for it. And it's fun. And I think it gives a very unique perspective on sales. And if I ever wanted to, and I enjoy sales, like I truly actually enjoy sales. So I think that it gives a very unique perspective if I ever move on from Reach Out Reptiles or, into another sales job. It's like, if I can, sell something that is a complete, want, not a need, or not have an actual 100%, and then be able to say, okay, you know what? I need you to hand me over several $1,000s of your hard-earned money, right? And here's why this snake is worth that, right? Then it just brings a unique perspective to sales experience, in my opinion.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, as we've hinted at throughout just our talking, our intro of you, what you're doing, you pretty much know we're going to be just discussing the ins and outs of sales. So you want to kind of dive into that. What makes you effective in selling these several $1,000 super dwarf reticulated pythons? What strategies, and what are you doing to convince people of the value of these snakes that are, excessive?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking not everything. When your intro, snake starts at $450. I mean, that's not cheap, by any means. And the one aspect that I do kind of like about that is that I don't have very many people that are like a snap decision. I'm going to buy this because it's under $100 and sitting on a table, right?
That's kind of the person you want to avoid, and I'm sure we'll jump into a little bit of that later. But
right, but that's one of the nice parts of it. And when I look at that, I would say that what makes it effective is like, I've already weeded out those people. Like, you gotta, as a salesman, you gotta figure out who you're gonna weed out and quick. And so you're figuring out how to focus on, what is your target audience, and because my starting point is already at that dollar amount, it honestly weeds out a ton of people for me and makes it so much easier than, say, like a ball python or colubrids and stuff like that are cheaper, for sure. So that definitely is a kind of an unfair advantage in that aspect. But from there, I think it really does boil down to how you do customer service, the way that you talk to them. and stuff. And for us, we'd never used a system where it was, you can just ask me for a price list and you have to go figure out and search it, right? I wanted to make it a personal experience. And so I worked on that for quite a while, perfecting it, and I'm always changing it to see. But it's now to the point where, like, I figured out over time, like, what questions are going to get asked and what questions do I need to ask and stuff. Because I get, okay, can I get a price list? That's not what we do here at Reach Out Reptiles. Instead, I say, we want to give you a personalized experience. So if I ask you these questions, then I can help narrow it down to the best options. And it makes it a very personable just a one-on-one experience every time. And the great part about it is, in sales, you obviously want to optimize your time. So I've literally, once I perfected, what it is for now and stuff, and I may change it, but anytime I change it, it's super easy because I use an Apple. And I got the keyboard shortcuts. So it's literally, I go through it, I had probably 90 emails. That was just emails to catch up from, right? Mm-hmm. But I know the majority of them are going to be, oh, what about this snake, or something that's going to be a starter conversation. And I literally do like 7 keystrokes. I type an email that's this long, and it starts that conversation. But I've made it where it feels like it's personable. It should, and not feel it is. But that starts that conversation, but it saves my time because I know it's the same conversation starter. So when you start to learn trends, if you can pick up on trends, then all right, then that's your first start right there. And then you want to figure out, how do you make the most effective point of your time? Stuff like those keyboard shortcuts, you're not sitting there typing out, 100 characters in each email, trying to come up with it every time. You've perfected it. Use those things like that to save yourself time and mental clarity. Yeah.
Do you feel like the shortcuts and kind of how you streamlined this buying process through Reach Out Reptiles? This is something that kind of Lucas wanted to ask, but he's not here, so I'm making sure I get it in. But do you feel like that process kind of weeds out some of the tire kickers?
Oh, for sure. Because you'll figure out which questions, like, they don't answer, and a lot of times it's, my budget's unlimited. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, my snakes range from $450 to, and I just give them an insane number. And I'm just like $100,000. So I was like, I'm really trying to help narrow you down. And I just think that some people, they just don't know what that they could even be that expensive, right? So when you streamline that, what I'm saying, and I know I'm like hitting a bunch, but what that does is it allows you to free up your mind in order to focus on what does that customer really want, right? Because you got to read between the lines on a lot of stuff, help them out. Or
what does that customer really need? Because when we're talking about reticulated pythons, like, everyone's needs in terms of caring for one of these animals is going to be a little bit different.
Oh yeah. And I mean, you have to look at that for sure, because I mean, it could be about where they live. It could be, someone in Colorado it's very much different than someone in Texas. Like, and you have to, if you're going to give them customer service, you got to be like, okay, thinking about where they're at. If I'm talking to someone in Texas and they're telling me, all right, I'm having major shedding issues and everything else, and it's like, okay, well, you're in a dry climate, so try this, use a humid hide instead of trying to get this 8-foot enclosure to 80% humidity. So it's like, just give them a humid hide. And they call me back, next month, and they're like, man, I had a perfect shed for the first time ever, right? But it's about having.
We also want to thank VivTech Products for being an affiliate sponsor of the Retic Lounge. Stop by VivTech Products for the best UV spectrum lighting on the market that will enhance and improve your snake's overall well-being and health. Visit vivtechproducts.com and use the code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off. Again, visit vivtechproducts.com and use our affiliate code ReticLounge23 today for 15% off. Looking for the perfect accessories for your hatchlings or juvenile retics? Look no further than Heli Guy Serpents. Our sponsor, Chris Sexton,
is coming in hot with an amazing.
I think to be an effective salesman, you have to, you know, be able to look at that and say, okay, you shouldn't have to be told like to think on that level, right? But you have people that are like that, and that's why not everybody can be a salesman. Because if you can't think on the fly and think outside the box and everything, and then give, you know, a perspective based on, all right, this is where they're living or whatever. All those things come into play, you know, and it comes into play on more than just sales. It comes into when you're shipping, you know, all those things. So, oh man, I didn't realize my battery is running out. Hang on, I'm gonna tell. Can you get my? It's upstairs, but I need the charger for this thing. Okay. Yeah, it does. Sorry, I don't want it to die.
No,
I'm at 11. I'm at 11%. I just looked at it. I was like, oh, that's
hey, at least you have some helpers around. That's nice.
Yeah, I've been like, all right, pause for effect. Let me run upstairs.
Hey, I would have done it. But jumping back in, like, so, I mean, you're having to still build some genuine connections and real relationships through these sales. So obviously there's a point where you have to be a little bit more personable with your clients. So when does that come into play? When you start narrowing down like budget and what they're looking for?
No, I mean, so, you know, I've got, it starts with, and it's all about kind of how they answer the questions back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And stuff determines on, you know, what kind of a customer do I classify you as? Like, because some of them are like, I know exactly what I want. And they'll give you very direct answers and say, if you ain't got it, I don't care. And then I'm moving on, right? And I'm like, cool, I don't have what you want. And I'm not going to try to convince you to spend your money. So you look at that person, and it comes with time and intuition and reading, you know, thousands upon thousands of emails, basically to say, okay, I can tell that this is the way the sale is going to go, and it's either going to be 100% or not. Then you get the ones that are like, they want to tell you their story from the ball python they had as a kid, and give you their entire history, and you're like, and so you talk back to them different, you know.
Yeah.
You're like, oh man, I bet Miss Lucy was just an amazing little ball python and stuff. But you don't want to just be like, you know, if that's the way they present themselves, what people want, you gotta understand mentality, right, in order to be effective. And so if you understand that what people want in reality is what they are, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So if you can give them that, right, give them a little bit of that, then they're like, oh, he's just like me.
One thing that's made me effective,
you know,
in maintaining a clientele behind the chair doing hair is mirroring my client's energy. Like that's the biggest 100%. Thing. If I haven't met you before you sit down in my chair, I'm going to feel it out for a minute, and I'm going to kind of react the way you are, because I'm not going to, you know, put all myself out there if you just want to sit silent.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's, you know, it's all about reading your customer and everything. Thank you. Gotta figure out well. I'll get you an extension cord or something like that. There's one at a time to go get it.
Go get that extension cord upstairs, buddy, please.
Gonna make sure we don't die here.
You're good, man.
You worked all day today.
All right, so what was the question again?
Just the importance of building those relationships.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, so you were talking about mirroring, you know, that energy.
Yeah, mirroring energy.
What that does, you know, is it just makes them feel like, okay, this is actually personal. This is not, because a salesman is the least trusted person, right? The only people below us are literally recruiters. So, you know, I mean, and if one thing is that I've learned is how to take an L. You know, the Army taught me how to take an L and get up every day and do it again. And recruiting taught it to me real hard. And so it doesn't bother me. And I feel like, you know, and really, I think that's a point kind of on down the line that we'll talk about. But like, just to hit on it, I mean, some of these people, you know, they take it so personal. Thanks, bud. You can plug it in over there by the tree. You know, like looking stuff, you know, like, don't waste my time. Ask your wife first, yada, yada. And I'm like, you, sir, just don't even realize, or ma'am, don't let me discriminate here, but y'all don't realize just how many sales y'all just lost to certain types of people that will, that just don't put up with that. And I don't have that issue, because I don't do that. And you're going to deal with tire kickers in this, and not everybody's going to be the win. And
is at least a building point on some relationship, whether it continues or not. Cool, but there was some interest there. Good deal. Move on.
No, 100%. And with that, if you can't accept that, then you don't realize how many other people that you have on that public forum that are seeing that, and it's in their head. They're thinking that they're putting out some kind of a PSA, and in reality, you're not. You're showing that all you care about is the dollar. I mean, don't get me wrong. You need to, as 100%, you have to regulate your time and you have to eliminate them. But that's on you, and you have to figure out how to do that without them knowing that that's what's going on. That you're eliminating them as a client. Like it because you still. I have eliminated clients and still got positive reviews and still had them send people my way. Why? Because, hey, okay, your budget is $200. I can't help you, right? I can't help you. But guess what? I know you do want it. Like, maybe go check out over here. I know these people, and they're not running a full-on business, so they have a little more leeway in playing. Maybe they'll be able to work with you, right? You send them over there, guess what? I already know if I send them over there that and I give my buddy a heads up, and it's like, hey, you got anything around this price? That's the thing, before I even send them over there, though, I'm already doing the background work real quick, right? And I send them over there, guess what? That client is happy. Yeah, that client is really not a client. They're happy that they've sent people my way because I established trust with that person. I didn't kick them to the curb. That's the key. You got to figure out how to build that relationship. If you're not figuring out how to build relationships, you're not figuring out how to advance yourself in your own relationship. That's the stuff that makes you effective in sales.
Well, and that $200 tire kicker can turn in, if that interaction's handled properly, can turn into a $2,000 client down the line. So I just feel like it's never worth burning a bridge for something that you could see as a minor inconvenience in your day.
I mean, if you look at it as an inconvenience, I don't think the starting questions. I mean, you can't figure out that they're going to be the inconvenience until they're, usually three discussions in. There's a few winners out there that can really do it in two, but you start to get that feeling, and after you've read, done enough correspondence, you can figure it out. But I found that it generally averages about 3. So, the other side of it, relationship, like I said earlier in the podcast, right? I'm a two-way street kind of guy. And I think one of the things that also burns people out that are in this industry is that they don't set guidelines for themselves. They don't set boundaries for themselves. And they train customers poorly because your hobby breeder's sitting here like, I've got to make the sale. I'll answer at midnight if I have to. And then they'll go get 97 photos at different angles and this, and then they'll do whatever the customer wants. The customer just dictated your entire sale. You're not a salesman at that point. You're not a salesman. The customer just dictated your entire thing. You set no boundaries. and now you're upset that they didn't buy the sale, but you did nothing. You did nothing to make that sale, right? All you did was accommodate their wants, which is not 100% what the customer's looking for. They're looking for an experience to make sure that it's good. Did you answer their stuff? Setting genuine boundaries, it helps in sales. Like, nobody is mad at me when I tell them, hey, you just bought a $5,000 snake. It's brand new. You're going to have to wait 2.5, 3 months while I get it established on food, right?
Yeah.
Guess what? I work 8 to 4:30 or 9 to 5:30, depending on the day. I said, and after work, I said, I don't answer, but I said, I know that you might have questions. So I said, I want you always to feel free to shoot me a text. I don't want you to forget your question. I said, just understand, I'm going to answer the next business day. I don't answer on the weekends, right? And they're like, okay, I totally understand. But you have, I set that as a boundary so that they don't sit here and go, oh man, I messaged you Saturday. Why didn't you get back to me? Well, because everyone else does. I'm like, that's not how I roll. Because I do this every day in and out. It's not. But I'm telling you that makes it, that sets effective guidance, right, for them. And what they don't have is this unexpected expectation that they're going to get responded to immediately.
Well, and you just laid out like one of the first like good sales and customer service rules is like beyond the boundaries is just clear communication. Like I had that today. I have some family in the hospital and I have someone looking at an animal and I said, I may have some time to reach out. I'll reach out if I do get a couple minutes and, then we'll handle it then. And but setting that clear communication and expectations on the other end so they're not bugging you at midnight at 2 a.m. is important.
Oh, 100%. But that's literally just one of those things that's relationship building. This is where I say, like, you can't just study sales, you need to study relationship building and setting the way that, relationships are effective, or they're setting those boundaries, and they're simple and they're easy, right? But if you're setting them as the salesman, right, you can set them. You don't necessarily have to tell the customer what those boundaries are. Some of them you don't. Like, for instance, one of the things that a lot of people bitch and complain about is, I took 97 photos at every angle for this person and they ghosted me. Okay, you know what? I do. Here's if a customer's like, can I get more photos, right? Especially like now that we use Morph Market, I say, okay, you know what? Here's what's easiest for me. If you don't mind, give me your phone number. I'm going to go out. I'm going to shoot a quick video. That way you can get a great 360. You get a feel for that personality, right? Because I know that you're buying this based on what my recommendation, what I'm telling you. And, without knowing what 100%. So I'm going to give you the best experience I can. And so you can really see it, right? So
that's my favorite way to do it.
1 minute video, right? And if they did specifically ask for a picture, I'm like, I got time to take 2 pictures. Like, you tell me if you want a specific angle and I'll get that for you. Are you trying to see something specific? And if you just lay that out right there, guess what? You did a 1 minute quick, or less video. And I just figured out that it's under 1 minute. It generally will send to every type of phone, whether Android or iPhone. Try and get in on any of that cool stuff. Definitely be talking about it. Pointing out, what do you think is great? What do you think is cool about this snake? Especially if it's if you're dealing with a new, someone who's never had a retic.
That's actually what I want to jump into next. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, yeah, then you're really trying to give them as much as you can. You're always trying to give them as much information as possible, and not be that salesman that's like, I'm not going to give you anything if you're not going to ask for it, right?
Yeah.
And so, but right there, it's like, hey, I gave you more than what you asked for in this video, and I gave you the 2 photos. That's where we're at, And then in order to make the sale, right? Then when I make the sale, they're like, for instance, if it's a brand new baby that has not even taken its first meal yet, I'm like, you just handed me $5,000 for, say a pure Carrampa male, right? You've been on the list for 3 years. Finally, you get it.
I didn't. I wanted to, but I didn't.
I know. I won't tell you that I've got 1.2 now, but anyway, we're not talking about that. But anyway,
I don't need my heart broken tonight.
But yeah, so I that's what I did is I established that boundary for them without having to tell them, right?
Yeah.
That's how I, without having to be like laying it out in the ground rules. It's like, hey, like I have to do a video, that's cool. And then here's 2 photos, and if they want something specific, that's what you look for. But that's how you limit your work. And then you keep it moving and keep it fast. So, and keep it personable. It's just a balance. It doesn't happen overnight. When I first started, it was clumsy. It was figuring it out. But more than anything, it came back to like figuring out streamline the process while making it personable. Mm-hmm. And then I had to look at it. The hard part there was like, I'm a very direct person, like especially in typing, because I'm like, I don't want to type all this. Like, so then I'm like, all right, use the cheats, right? Chat GPT. Take what I'm saying and put it in here and say, hey, make this sound like a better sales pitch or like this person or whatever. And it will literally, and then you take it and you tweak that, but it adds in the fluff that makes people feel good, or it changes up, those synonym words that are going to make people feel more comfortable. Use that stuff to your advantage. It's out there. It's not going away. No. I mean, sales is easier than it ever has been on one aspect because you got all these tools to help you.
If you're not using AI professionally to enhance the experience you're giving your customers, no matter the industry you're in, you're kind of putting yourself behind right now.
For sure.
I mean, this podcast, for example, Lucas is really good at like typing out like, guidelines for questions we're going to go over. He gets real specific with it, spends some time. And, I would rather, and this is what I did with you, I would rather just throw the topic in, talk with AI for a second, kind of personalize my guideline for 10 minutes instead of an hour and a half. And then, that's just a guideline. I'm not going to stick to it verbatim. I'm going to make it personable, but I think it's one of the best tools that we have right now.
Oh, I think so, for sure. And if you're not using it, you're cutting yourself short. I promise you.
Yep.
Because it really does. It helps, and it will help. Like it's helped me take in what I've got in my head, but I'm like, nope, short, sweet, bam, to the point. I'm like, I need to make this sound better, to make it better, and that's where, even though it's automated for me, right, on those 7 keystrokes. Mm-hmm. It's personable for them to start, right? It doesn't feel like it is keystroked out. That's the goal. So it's all about what does it make it effective, right? And it doesn't matter because that's the 5 questions I want to ask every time, right? First one is, what state do you live in? If you're not asking that, if you are a Retic reader or any other species that has state restrictions, let me tell you, if you're not asking this question, you are an irresponsible seller.
I have a comedian buddy who tours around he's based out of New York, but he came out and visited the collection because he can't keep retics in New York. And he's like, I would really love to have one of your babies one day. And I was like, yeah, that sucks. You better move out of New York. I'm not that guy for you, I promise.
Oh yeah, no, I get it all the time. Florida and New York are the 2 worst, right? Mm-hmm. For sure, because they're just like, well, I mean, what if New York's like, well, what if I got it shipped to Jersey and I'm like, no, I know that you're there. I was like, my snakes have a lineage. It's not worth your, and so it's usually the customer that's like, I've got $750 though, like, I'm like, cool, great for you. Like it ain't worth risking my business.
There's some other really cool species that you can keep out in New York and
100%. And here's the thing: what do you do? What do you do with those customers, right? Let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
Do you just blow them off, right? No, right? Because they have friends. It's all about a positive experience. So with them, right? I'm like, hey, unfortunately, if you didn't know this, your state has outlawed this as a whole species, even though it's a super dwarf. It doesn't matter because it's not the same subspecies. You give them a little bit of understanding in history, right, and stuff. Then, for me, I'm like, but hey, you know what? I know you love this species, so if you want to help out and join the fight to try and help us, get this overturned, this unconstitutional freaking law, right? Join USARC. Here's the website. So I'm every one of those customers, and then if it's US, if they're in Florida, then it's USARC Florida. They get some both, right? Hey, go out here, get some understanding on why they're stepping the constitutional right to freaking keep these animals in the over 70 pounds. So I don't know. I'm saying constitutional, but it might not be. I might need to brush up on that. But and then you're sending them towards USARC in order to help your cause, right?
Yeah, I think another step too is just like if they do have that. If they're a reptile person already, have the connection with other retic people, encourage those people to, continue the research that's being done on them. There's plenty of genetic testing being done, scale testing being done to, further identify what these different subspecies are of reticulated pythons. So, I mean, yeah, right. we're all hopeful that one day they can be separated, right?
Oh, 100%. But you got to get those people on your side. Then you say, like, all right, even though you can't keep this species, for instance, one of the ones that I think, that comes to mind for me is like, maybe look at carpet pythons. They're very similar in size and body, right? They're a very beautiful snake.
Great feeding response.
To look at, or, if, based on their answers, like, the next thing would be, size, if someone's like, I just need one that maxes out at 6 foot. I'm like, I don't think you know enough about the species right there. That tells me that you haven't done the research, right?
Yeah.
And I told them, I'm like, hey, like here's some stuff. Because I'm not saying we don't have some that have maxed at 6 feet as a potential growth. And I think that's a super dwarf. That's dwarfism inside the insular dwarfism, right? Like it's just super small.
And to try to guarantee that out of the egg or even with a yearling animal is almost impossible.
No, I'm never going to. That's why I give a range. And I'm like, even our smallest ones, we say are 6 to 8 feet. So if you're not ready for that potential of 8 feet, but then I'm like, I said, but I just want you to understand, and this is where I have a few photos on hand. I'm like, like the one I posted up with Joker the other day. I'm like, that's one, like a photo like that. I'm like, this snake is, 7.5 feet max, right? Like
he's one of my favorite examples to use as far as like percentage in size
for everything. Yeah,
25% Kalatoa, 25% Jampea, and he's tiny.
7.5
and his babies are tiny. Like it's a little bit more than just percentages. But
I have that conversation too all the time. It's like that's the next one. I need a super high percentage. Okay, why? Oh, because I want it to stay small. And I'm like, well, it's like you want it, like that's where you start digging in. What do you really want?
Yeah, we've talked
percentage, about it and do you want to pay for it, or do you want small because this is going to be your pet, right? Like I breed specifically some of these smaller, cheaper ones because of that, because that's what they want.
And then there's guys like me that want both high percentage and small animals, and that just comes with a little extra cheddar,
for sure. And I'm the same way, I mean, golly, the amount of, I figured it out. I mean, your girl's a Bilbo girl.
Yeah,
right.
Bilbo and Eric Lee. The Eric Lee one was the one that bred with Joker.
Oh, was it Eric Lee? But either way, they're all the
same genetics.
The same. Whether they're I think the parents are like cousins. I don't think they were siblings.
Came
or
from a
something, but-
Canadian breeder, ended up in Ben Rennick's stock, and then ended up with
Yep.
Eric Lee and Bilbo and a few
Bilbo,
others.
right? So, you know, I mean, they're regardless the same and stuff. And it's like, I love the Bilbo line. I couldn't get my hands on any of Eric Lee's, but I think the only person that owns more Bilbo animals than me is Bilbo, because I recently acquired 2 more.
Oh, did you really?
So, a visual anery and a wild type pasta head that I've got to prove out. So I think I'm up to like 8 of these females. So I get the small size, and my smallest one, I don't know if you remember, like 2 years ago, Tinks, when I was like had her sitting next to a coffee cup on 6 eggs, right? Like,
oh yeah.
You know, and I'm sitting here holding her like this, and she's just like those little, you know, they range from that size, but they, you know, that's the smallest out of the group that I have. And then the biggest one, she's about 9.5 feet, right? Either way, that I've got 8 of them in between those ranges, and that's super small. So, you know, even for a female, that's what I try to tell people. Like, they're like, 10 feet. And I'm like, so, you know, that's the next thing. It's like, okay, give yourself good examples and give yourself quick reference photos. Have a file that's right there, because the same questions get answered all the time, and you can literally give them the same answer.
I have a handful of pictures with that purple female, and I haven't bred her yet, but that anery female that's about 10 foot and just on me, and it shows you, I mean, yeah, it's 10 foot, but it's not what you're expecting.
Got that anery female over there. I like it. So, but I'm gonna get sidetracked down the rabbit hole with anery. But anyway, transparency, you know, and stuff like all of that. When you help them figure out what it is that they're really wanting, and then you educate them on the why, right, and give them examples, and don't make them feel stupid. Like they don't know what they don't know, right? Yeah. You do know. And so, you know, any of you that are out there selling animals have a responsibility to the rest of the community to not make dickhead customers. All right. Like, do your best, be the bigger person. All right. Like, and everything. And I mean, don't get me wrong, everyone's going to have a bad day. I've had one and everything else. But
that's ultimately training their interactions with the next person they interact
100%,
with.
100%. You know, if I could ask every one of you all to stop freaking responding to anything after 9 p.m. and enjoy your life, it'd be great. But that's not going to happen. You know,
you're like, on the East Coast. It's all those West Coast guys.
I wish you should. Oh man, you should see my phone. Like, because I get home, I set it down. I do. You know, like maybe it gets checked once throughout the weekend for anything that could have been, I don't know, some kind of an emergency. But yeah, other than that, like, no, like you got to set those boundaries for yourself. And that is what's healthy and stuff for you, you know, and the customers, because then you respond better to the customers because you're in a better position. And it's for the health of you and the customer and training a customer well. And that all boils down to however you are selling to that customer, you know, 100%.
I absolutely agree. I want to kind of jump back to new owners of retics and kind of sales surrounding them. How much education and the care of reticulated pythons, you know, their behavior, their food response, all of that, do you get into when assessing if a new buyer is going to be a right fit for a retic?
You know, that's really, again, it boils down to starting with that assessment and saying, okay, based on how they're answering the questions and stuff and what are they giving you, right, will tell you a lot. And that tells you what kind of questions to ask. You know, those type, you know, it's like if everything seems a little off, then you should, as the seller, should start digging into that a little more.
For someone that's new, what are some like major green or red flags that come to mind though? Like pretty specific ones that you go, okay, I'm gonna, you know, steer this another way, or okay, I'm good to go.
So you know, like always, it's initially with the 5 questions starting out. If they start skipping it, you know, then I'm like, okay, you're not giving me everything I need. Why are you not giving me everything I just asked you for? I made it super simple, right? So that starts a red flag because it's like, okay, you're trying, what it is you're feeling like I'm a sales, like very, it feels like you can't trust me as a salesman. So now I'm like, I've got to figure out how to gain trust. Like, and a lot of it always boils down to the dollar, right? Because everybody's like, oh, I don't want you to try and sell me, with the top end of my budget.
Sure.
Cool. Here's the deal. As a customer, if you don't want me to try and sell you at the top end of your budget, come in $500 lower, but give me a number, because the reality is my snakes, anything in right now that I have sitting at the shop ranges between $450 and 20 grand, right?
Sure.
And when you say money's not an option, then you know what I'm going to do as a seller? I'm going to try to sell you the most expensive snake. And I'm going to tell you why, because you just told me money's not an option. You set yourself up for that. So don't set yourself up for that. Answer your breeder's questions, because your breeder is really, ultimately, if they're asking these type of questions, then they are doing their due diligence to try and help you out. They're not making you sit here and sort through a list and then, not have any kind of background info or anything like that, and you take that and it's like, okay, if you don't know anything, it's in the way you answer it. So it comes out. And that's when you start to dig. And it's like, sometimes it'll boil down to where I'm like, specifically, like, if you ever owned a Retic. The thing is with it, I find a lot of people are finding us through either YouTube, Instagram or something like that. They kind of start watching it. Clint's Reptiles, Adam Wickens, and mention us, stuff like that. And then they come over, so they start to look at our videos, and then they start to get an idea. And then they're usually very upfront and open, because they're like, never owned a Super Dwarf, I've owned this and that, right? So then you're like, okay, like, usually I'm like, let's have a phone call. Let's talk about food response. Let's talk about this. But a lot of times the keepers that realize that they're keeping a Retic, they're not sitting here like, they're like, I need to know how to properly care for this thing, So I think the red flags, they just surface themselves. Listen to your gut, listen to your intuition.
Yeah.
But we as responsible breeders, we're, like, you see it all the time on the Facebook groups where, like, people feel like you should be gatekeeping, like it's the fucking Hoover Dam. No, like, we as responsible breeders need new people coming in. You're supposed to be gatekeeping it like it's Six Flags, okay? Like, people should be allowed to come in, but you're like still screening them, making sure they ain't got weapons on them, whatever. That idea, right? Like, that's the mentality. But you need to be moving them through, right? Some people, you slow them down and stuff and give them a little extra love, right? But otherwise,
those are the customers I love.
Don't gatekeep it so hard that you turn somebody completely away just because you were a dick,
Yeah, and those are the customers I love to reach out and have a phone call with. If I'm kind of struggling to, meet in the middle somewhere, I feel like taking that 5-10 minutes to have the phone call ultimately eliminates, 30 minutes, an hour and a half of my time going back and forth over text. You're able to make that connection. I mean, a little bit more organically. I think.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's 100%, and that's where you got to read each customer, and that's another thing. Is like, you can, and it's where we're in a time now though where so many people, like, what all they want to do is text. They don't want to call, and then you find it rude if you call without texting first and asking permission. I was like, man, they used to ring me at dinner. You know what I did? I just let the answering machine get it. Back when I had a cord on the wall, right? Like, some people don't know about that life. I mean, we just used to call, used to look people up in a phone book and just randomly call them. Like, that, none of that happens anymore. So it's weird. And that's why it's so, that's where it's important to figure out and feel that out and know that you got to know what social nuances are and keeping up with those things, because it's really easy. You can you end up upsetting the apple cart, right? Unexpectedly. So it's like, keep up with those social norms, right? Like, say, all right, cool. It takes no extra time. Even if you think it sucks and it's stupid, it takes an extra 5 seconds. Send the text like, hey, do you have time for a phone call? Yeah. Or like me, if I want to establish it, then I'm like, hey, let's set a time, and then I can be prepared, and I block that time for you. If you block that time for people, then and you make sure it's known, like, all right, cool, that is your time. it sets it in people's minds, you know, and then you have less people that stand you up, you know. I mean, you're going to have it. Take that L, move about your day. It's not like it,
Yeah.
you had an hour planned for this. Okay, guess what? You're still getting in work. You know what? Happened all the time when I was on recruiting. It happens occasionally in sales. And that's what's going to happen. You just have to be ready for that and accept it.
Yeah, the old Gretzky,
those,
you miss every shot you don't take.
for sure. You know, but you know, when you can talk about those red flags, I think it's about intuition. I think that if you've been doing it long enough, you just start to pick up on it and you trust your gut, right? And then you do that. You know, do I feel like this is a customer that I can work with, but it's going to be settled by a phone call? Cool. Let me schedule that with you, right? You want to be inviting, but you don't want to be walked on, right? As a salesperson, and so figure out the way to control it while still making that customer feel like they have had a great experience. Ultimately, you're winning, right? But you're keeping yourself in a good mindset. That's where salesmen get so burnt out because they're, you know, like I said earlier, they're just letting the customer run the sale, and they never feel like they're in control. Well, then that's how they get burnt out so quick. Keep it in control, right? You don't have those issues. And then you're providing the kind of experience for the customer that you want. Build that out in your head. Build that out. That's what you want. And when you build out what you want, then you can deliver that every time. It just makes it easy. And then you get past those red flags of like, okay, cool. Now we've had a phone call. It happened to me the other day, right? I'll give you a great example. I had a customer that had bought a golden child, and it was great. Did videos. It looked healthy. You know, it got there, and you know, the customers, you know, stayed in contact with me, let me know, like, hey, it hasn't eaten. Hey, it hadn't eaten. They were great, everything, and then like it kind of got to a point where he's like, hey, I think the snake's going downhill, right? And I have a starting way that I handle any of those kind of conversations, right? It's like, all right, let me see what you're working with on this and that and everything.
No, I would love to hear your philosophy on this because I ran into this year, and I think I did too much. So I would love to hear how you handle these situations.
Well, ultimately with him, you know, I started off with, you know, like, okay, why is it not eating? What do you have it in? Let me see that. Like, you know, can I get some pictures? What I didn't realize is that this man and his wife, between the two of them, have 65 years of experience with snakes, right? I knew he had snakes. I knew he had reticulated pythons. So I was not handling it like quite, you know, wasn't like kindergarten style, but it's still like I also as a business, like I have a certain way that I have to, you know, go through a process, right? 100%. And then I fully believe that you should have a process so that it's not off the cuff every time you have a process, right? Through that, you know, like the customer was really great in answering my questions. And then like it kind of hit a point though, you know, where the customer was like, I could tell he was irritated by the way he texted me back. I said, okay. I said, I'll tell you what. I said, I am at lunch. So let me give you a call back. Or let me give you a call after lunch. Let's talk about this. You know, because I immediately knew that I wasn't meeting his expectations, right? But I also I knew that I didn't understand what his expectations were. I just knew I wasn't meeting them. So I give him a call. We have, you know, some light chit chat, you know, to catch up because he's a really nice guy and that's the way he likes to start out a conversation. And I said, okay. But then I got right into it and I said, all right, you know, obviously I said, I understand by your text. I said that I'm not meeting your expectation right now. And I would like to know what that expectation is. I said, I knew that you kept retics. You had showed me that. I said, but I didn't realize that, you know, kind of that your level of experience was 35 years, 30 years. You can identify this, you know, and I have a policy that's in place that every customer signs. It says, hey, you got 24 hours. And then, you know, if something's not wrong with the snake,
it's kind of beyond your control.
Okay, it's on beyond my control. Like anything could happen in that person's collection, right?
But I think most of us have a similar kind of
and that's to protect
set of rules. Yeah.
And he read that, understood it, and signed it, and went back and reread it when he felt like the snake was starting to go downhill and stuff. And you know, then I had a conversation with him. I said, you know, it's 100% there too. protect the business and everything else. I said, but obviously there's also case by case scenario. I was like, I trust what's going on. I said, let's pick you out another one. I had a direct replacement that's a sister. I was like, I'm going to ship this snake to you next week. I shipped that other, just turn around. I'm going to put a return label. So all you have to do is put it right back in the tin, slap that label on the box, put it in the mail to me, and stuff. But he sent me some pictures and some videos, and stuff showing the snake. And I agreed with his assessment that looking at the snake, this is just the way it goes. Like I know I've kept enough of them that sometimes, especially if they sometimes they just go downhill quick before you even know what's going on, and it's weird. And you don't have an explanation as to why, right? And that's kind of what happened with this one. But also, I'm talking with the man, him, his wife, 65 years of experience. I don't think every other retake area is thriving. Every cage looks amazing. So obviously, I could tell that something happened with the snake, and it's with the snake. It's not with them. So I offered. I got a direct replacement. I'm going to send you the shipping label. Unfortunately, the snake did pass away over the weekend. He sent me a photo, but in something like that, you gotta. I thought I was doing everything well, especially because the conversation was going well, and then it took this hard turn with one text message, and this is where it goes back to building that genuine relationship. Is because I had many conversations with this man, always very cordial. So when I seen that slight change, I'm like, okay, I know. Now it's like, what do I got to do to meet that? Well, just ask the question. So many of y'all are afraid to ask the specific question, try and beat around the bush and everything else. Just get specific. Ask the specific question in order to make that customer, what are your expectations? And then figure out, can you meet exactly what they want? Or if you can only meet it this far, then you're just like, all right, this is as close as I can get you, and here's why. Some of y'all act like, you don't owe that explanation to them. Well, then that's why you don't have great customer reviews, right? And you've got a 3-star rating on Yelp and everything else. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. More often than not, it boils down to you, right? And I promise you, there's been bad customer experiences even with myself, right?
It's bound to happen.
And it happens, more often, but they're few and far between. And, I would say probably my most iconic one was with one of your previous guests. And, he is just a unique individual when it came to how he wanted to be spoken to. And it really threw me off, right? And what I will say is he was very professional in the way that he gave his feedback and everything else. It was definitely talked about. Him and Garrett worked it out and everything else. But the reality is he listed out his expectations very plainly. And Garrett told him, in the response, what could and couldn't then be met based on what he thought he saw and everything and all of this, right? So we layered it out. And it all worked out in the end. Not to say that, him and I are like on speaking terms or anything by that matter. But, it's also like it did come back full term to where he did send an apology saying, okay, you know what, I was at least out of line here. And I was apologetic for, at the point of through it where it's like, okay, we're not meeting this expectation. I wasn't trying to, lower your status or anything by, I was like, this is normally the way that my customers like to feel inclusive, right? And you're acting like I'm selling you fucking medical equipment, like it's not the way I operate, but I can adjust, right? But by then, the sale hadn't worked out anyway, and that's fine. And I just took that out. But that's the deal. Like, lay it out, be specific, ask the question, don't be afraid of it, because as a salesman, you need to lead it, right? You need to lead it. You can't be afraid of it. So if you can get that through your head, again, that comes with knowledge, building relationships, research, read, understand it. The more that you can do that, the better off you're going to be.
Okay. So building off just everything you've talked about, can you give just a good outsider's perspective, seeing as you're one of the only, like you said, maybe 10, 15 people in the country that have this specific, very niche job? What are some of the, what are the shortcomings that you see in other people's sales, like, or their sales tactics?
Well, I mean, we all know there's several charlatans out there.
Yeah, I mean,
that are gonna,
beyond the people that are just lying about what they have and
what they have. You're gonna have that and everything else.
Yeah. Let's say someone has a good product, but they're just falling short on the sales. What do you think the shortcomings generally are in the reptile world?
A lot of that is you have a dollar amount and you are not able to establish that the value is there. Okay. You have to be able to establish that value is there, because the reality is in this industry that it is only worth exactly what someone is willing to pay for it. So, and that's the pet industry as a whole, because it is a want, it's not a need, right? So when I ask somebody and I say, hey, I need $25,000 for this world's first dwarf golden child mocha 100% head anery, why is that important? Like, why is it worth 25 grand? And why is somebody going to give me that? Well, it's because there's only one being let out. But do you understand like what mocha does for your breeding program? Right? The problem, everything out there is mochino, but you can breed mochino with anything. But the way that it works, because it's a lilac with park strain, is anything that's not visual, you don't know what het you're giving away. You could be giving away het purple, which is, whatever. You could be giving away het mocha that's worth tons of money. So if you have a mocha, you can literally put mocha into anything. Oh, man, excuse me. Sorry about that.
I think that was just an audio glitch.
Yeah, something like that. Oh, geez. But you could literally put mocha into anything, het mocha, right? Then, because we've got high percentage albino stuff already out there, even if you put it in with to low percentage, if you had the right either male or female, whichever way on the other end, now you're breeding out high percentage mochino stuff. Like, that's why like I kept out of that breeding, I got the GC Sunfire Mocha 100% head anery male that I'm putting. He's not going to be big enough to breed this coming season, but next season. And I'm putting him to a known pure 50% Kalatoa, 50% Madu, head anery, freaking female, to bring my percentages from, where they're at I don't know, I forget exactly where he's at off the top of my head, but it's low. He's dwarf percentages. But now I know all those are 100% het mocha. Well, I've got a Bilbo albino male that, I'm pretty sure he's going to prove that anery. I still got to prove him out. But he'll prove out before. But now I've got this slew of females that are, 100% het mocha, visual aneries, that are in the 60 percentile, right? We're running them to a 75% Kalatoa male. Oh, and they're all small. It's in the way you jump it. So that mocha, just the same as like the Indo caramel that we finally got this year too. It's different than Orange Glow. Orange Glow works great. But if you are doing the wrong type of breeding, then you are giving away genetics and you're softening the market. Yep. Don't freaking do that. If you're gonna, like, seriously. It's so frustrating to see it, because don't get me wrong, like there are breedings where that has to happen. You have to run the double head to double head. I have them, right? I've got those double head Indo caramels. My girl didn't go this year, but Metcalf got them, right? I know me personally, I would keep the visuals and quietly, I would probably quietly just like wholesale them as feeders, because it softens the market. Because I don't know like who's a het and who's not, right? Somebody's getting into the Indo Caramel project for $650 because they picked the right freaking het, pos het.
Yeah.
It's like,
don't soften the market by just trying to make a sale, even though you don't totally know what you have. What are some other things that you see going wrong in people's customer service in terms of selling their animals?
I would say probably not doing any kind of a follow-up ever would be one, checking in on that snake, and stuff, not interacting with them after the sale,
that's actually
really cool. Like
that's actually
before.
some of what I wanted to hit on in the customer service, though, and we'll get back to what people could do better. But how much follow-up is there after you've made a sale with Reach Out Reptiles? Like, what does that process look like?
I mean, I always try and hit them up, and stuff with, especially, I'm double checking on shipping, did the snake make it, right?
And the hashtags definitely help.
The hashtags help with that. And so
but I mean, as you and I know, saying, like, not everyone utilizes that.
No, not everybody does, right? But what I'm saying is, like, the first follow-up should be at the day that it's supposed to arrive at them. That's your first follow-up. Like, hey, did the snake make it, right? And then it's like, with each customer, you fill them out and stuff. You tell them, at least I do. I'm like, hey, I'd love to see these follow-ups, hit me up with them. And a lot of them will come to you. And if you open that channel of communication, right? The ones that don't, then I'm like, okay, let me hit them up. Hey, how's the snake doing? And it may only be one more follow-up after that, right? Again, it is very much a gauging of like, hey, is this person like a talker or not, And so I don't have a set standard. I really do work it a little bit to each individual, just like I do every sale.
I think that's almost necessary. I mean, you're going to have those customers that are going to create a dedicated page to that animal, and then you're going to have that customer that buys one of your, most sought after animals in the clutch and then never show it again.
Oh yeah, those people that are like, listen, I don't want anybody to ever know I have this. Like, got it. And that's the other side of it. Is if another side of it, that'd be something else I've definitely seen other people do. Don't run your flipping mouth about your customers. Like, I mean, you can tell the story, but they don't need to know. You don't have to be putting their business out there, especially to someone else, right? Without permission.
Yeah, there's stories I have, or there's a story I have about an interaction with a customer. I'll tell it now. And I've told it before, but back in this FB70 behind me, there's a wild type. This animal, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Sent out videos, pictures were sent. This animal looked perfect before I sent it out. The only thing wrong with it is at the very tip of the tail was a little kink. Mm-hmm. That was all disclosed. I want to say it was like 4 to 6 months after this person had the animal. They sent me a picture and said, hey, do you know what this is? And it was showing an enlarged heart at that point. And so of course, that's not what any pet owner wants to see in their animal. But customers' expectations were a little bit higher than I think were necessary. Same thing. Saw my agreement, animal, 24 hours. If there's nothing wrong, like, that's your animal. But me having a big heart and doing sales for my first year, I tried to go above and beyond, had phone calls, offered credit towards animals in the future. And then this customer, just kept making posts visibly and very vocally upset about what was going on with this animal. And I got tired of it to a point where I did something I shouldn't have done, and I offered to buy that animal back. Okay. So I'm excited to hear some of your perspective on a situation like that. I mean, I'm happy that I did it because, you know, this person wasn't an experienced retic keeper. Got some advice from a handful of different people on, you know, this animal has an enlarged heart. If you're gonna keep it, you know, feed it light. You know, don't overstress the animal. The typical thing you would do with an animal with heart issues. I bought this animal back, and it is roughly double the size of any of my hatchlings that I've kept back and fed on a good weekly basis here. So, like, I'm happy I bought that animal back because I feel like, you know, ultimately the customer was trying to kill it and just see how much this animal could, you know, withstand. But, you know, I feel like in the sales customer service side of things, I probably did a little too much.
So listen to that story, right? And I think that's where it does vary a little bit between a business and for you as a hobby or hobbyist breeder, right?
Yeah.
Is that, you know, from a business perspective, I can be like, okay, I can either, you know, I can either take that hit a little bit because you know, I'm gonna have customers coming behind, and but as a small hobbyist breeder, when I hear what you did and the way that person was being and you know with that animal, honestly, I think that you may have done a financially smart decision for yourself, you know, moving forward, because someone like that, when you're only offering 1 to 2 clutches a year as a boutique type breeder, then I think you do have to handle that situation. And I don't think you handled it the wrong way, because like you said, once you got the animal back, you're like, man, it's twice the size of anything else. And I think they were just trying to kill it. And then, but if they had succeeded, right, what are they going to do? They're going to run your name in the dirt. And every time your name comes up in a positive manner, as it does, then they're going to have that person kind of like trailing behind with this story, and it's a one story, right? But now, has it all stopped since you bought the animal back? Probably. You know, did you get any continued negative feedback?
No, not really. I mean, as far as I'm aware, but I mean, just it wasn't a good.
It sounds like it's not a great situation by any means, and
no. It's not something I love sharing, but I feel like it's important to share for someone who may just be getting into it.
It's 100%, right? That's an example. But the other side of it is, as customers, you need to establish, like, hey, like you know, it's once it's there, like I don't, you know, like I typically don't buy back, you know, and here's why. Yeah. You know, if you give me what you got, like maybe I can make that connection. And this is where I think with people like that, you know, I had a situation where I got a customer in Louisiana that can no longer keep a snake they bought in 2021. I was like, I don't buy them back, but please give me, you know, let me know your information. I'll see if there's somebody that clicks, right? It just so happened I had a mother and a wife reach out, you know, not a couple of days before that, kind of gave me her story and everything, you know, going through some health issues. Her husband really stepped up. Obviously, though, you know, big health issues come with the medical bills, right? And so she's like, I just really want to do this for him. Is there a way you can work with me and everything else? Based on what, you know, on that, I was able to make that connection. It works. It's going to work out where that snake's going to get a home, right? And, you know, and then that woman or that mother and wife is going to be able to do what she wanted to do for her husband, but be able to put more of those funds into like the caging and everything, which to me is all the way around a win, even though I didn't get a set sale yet, you know, anything like that. You know, she does say she wants to buy a female for it in the future, but I understand, like, you know, so you know, but where someone was like sitting here saying, hey, can you buy this back because my state's about to outlaw these? And I'm like, I can't, like, I don't have extra caging sitting around for a 3-year-old animal to come in, right, and be able to put it into. I don't have just open cages. If it's open, it's getting upgraded, right? So I'm like, I can't. But then it's like, but let me see what I can do to help you, right? And if you honestly give that help, then you're going to see, like, oh man, now that's where you point people. But I think in the situation that you said, I mean, it's definitely different. I think you did probably the best thing for you to stop that negativity.
Sure,
You know?
sure. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you
But
on
I wouldn't
a lot of
establish
fronts.
it as I wouldn't establish that as to say, hey, like this is a thing that I do. You'll never,
No, absolutely
I mean,
not.
actually, honestly, like think about it. Someone who did do that was like Samson did that for a while. He guaranteed where it's like, hey, if you buy it now, if you want to ever give it up, I'll buy it back at like this certain dollar amount. And he honored it, right? But it almost like he didn't realize like how many people, and I think that's one of the things for people in our mindset. If we're doing this enough that we love to breed them, we don't think somebody's going to want to give them back, right? I don't ever want to give mine up. So we don't think like that. And it definitely hurt him, financially for a little bit from what I heard, because he was a man of his word in that aspect where he did honor it, and I give that to him. But it
Didn't
wasn't,
have
it's
the
not
time,
something that you can,
infrastructure, or energy to be able to sustain that.
right, 100%. So, it's where it is on a case by case basis. I think you handle every one of them. You have the overall, tight knit, harsh, whatever you want to call it, rules and terms of service and purchase and shipping policy. In order to protect you, it's important to have that, look at it and assess it and make sure it's there to protect you but when you have a customer, it's one way or another, you try and handle it individually as best you can. I think that's the key. Because even if it doesn't end the way you want it to, you still want to try and make it end positive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Speaking of the positive, I kind of want to get into just like certain scenarios you've been in within the last couple of years working with Reach Out Reptiles in your sales position. Just a couple stories of like successful sales anecdotes that just highlight maybe something that's made you grow or just a good customer service experience that could help other people grow.
Let's see, what would be one that like really stands out? I had a customer that I remember him very specifically. It was very interesting because he was an older gentleman. He had kept 6 years ago, and he was a rare coins dealer, right? Which is unique. And again, it boils down to like, okay, this guy is knowing what he does, and that's where you get that personable side of it, right? So if he deals in rare coins, you're already like, okay, this guy's going to have a certain expectation, right? Like in the way that stuff is handled. Obviously, if he deals in this kind of an industry, this is a similar type industry. It's a want, not a need, right? You got people dropping, and this guy was willing to drop. He started out with he wanted a certain amount of snakes, and he gave me a $60,000 budget, right? And told me to build it. And he was like, build this package. Here's what I want. And so I took that time. I really took time to build it out. Made sure, double checked myself, made sure I answered every specific question, got them all together, everything. And he's like, well, before I drop this amount of money, I want to come out to the shop and visit him. And I'm like, you gonna drop 60 grand? Absolutely. Come on. Like, so he comes out, we show him everything. I've got him prepped. I've got him shown, making sure they look as good as possible. Do everything, take him to lunch. Had a great experience, and everything. And then like the worst part is that literally right before we were supposed to finalize everything, tripped going down the stairs, broke his back in 3 places, and he was like, and like I said, as an older gentleman in his 60s, like he's not going to heal right as easy. And he was definitely like, you've dealt with the back issues.
I've dealt with that, and then my dad just took a spill on his e-bike yesterday and is having a fusion surgery as we speak. So like I know how fast life can hit you in situations like that.
So that one was, yeah. So, but you know, when you're looking at a sales experience one, like, man, like everything was, that was one of my biggest L's. And it was, and you know, because like,
but
I
not
mean, I put
necessarily because of
hours,
like a
I put,
bad
but
sales
not,
experience. It was
no, it's
just
not. And
bad
this is what I'm
circumstances.
saying, you know, it's bad circumstances, but I had put hours and, you know, like to make sure that, you know, it was answered in a certain, you know, just in a certain way because it's a certain type of customer. You know, put the hours in to make sure when he came out, did all of that, right? Um, and what I'm saying is like when you're talking about like what is an experience that happened, that one was one where it like you know it wasn't like any fault, right, or anything. It's a bad experience, but it still hurt that it, you
Mhm.
know. And I think you know for me to lose that sale a little bit, like you know, and I mean you know I don't, you know, by no means, there's no blame or anything like the man just fell. So like, I want anybody to take it like that. But when you put in like that much work and you have that kind, like that was about to be my biggest sale ever, right? Like it was, and like I said, all locked in, all agreed upon, and stuff. And he was moving the money in order to, you know, be able to write that check. And then all of a sudden it was just like, it was all gone, you know, like,
Yeah.
so it's like, you know, so here's what I will say. When something like that happens, that's a different kind of L.
Yeah.
You know, I've said this several times, right? When something like that happens, that's a different kind of L. So when you take that L as a salesman on something like that, where you put in, you know, a lot of time, a lot of extra effort, and a lot of, you know, and stuff, take the time, process that feeling, and then let it go. All right, process that feeling and then let it go. You're allowed to have that feeling. Take, you know, if you got to take the rest of the day off, you got to, you know, go shoot guns, go whatever, do whatever, right? Process it and let it go. And don't take it out on the next customers, right? If you don't process that one, hold on to it, you start to get salty,
Yeah.
right? And then that saltiness you won't even realize it because it's like reducing a dog's chain one link at a time. You can take that dog all the way to a post where it'll be happy to sit there if you do it one link at a time because it doesn't even realize you're reducing it. You know, and how that connects is like you don't realize if you hold on to it, it's taking one chain link from you at a time. And how you react with customers. And I know it's from personal experience. I didn't process something. I started to see a trend in how I was dealing with customers. Guess what? Then I started to see a trend in how I wasn't getting the sale that I wanted when I normally do. And that was all a self-assessment based on an L that I never like, a big L, wasn't this one, but a big L I took. And it bothered me, but I never processed it. So your little L's, fluff them and let them go, right? Your
Yep.
dailies,
Yep.
you just roll, let that water off a duck's back. But if it's one you worked for, guys, take that time. I'm telling you, take that time because if you don't, it's going to affect you if you don't process it for sure. So that was the biggest takeaway from that one, you know, is it was like you can do all that work, and it's to me, you know, it's like either, you know, an accident like that, an act of God, you know, something major happens and all of a sudden, you know, whatever it is, take the L, roll on, you're right. Even if you think it's total bullshit, like, you know, even on those L's, the ones that you think are, this dude's bullshitting me, cool,
The
have a
ones that
great
smell
day.
funny. Yeah. Let them
Yeah, they
smell.
want, let them smell, right? Hey, have a great day. I hope you enjoy your animal. You know, oh, you went with someone else. Like I've been, you know, I had that recently. Literally went back and forth for probably a month because the guy's response time wasn't great, right? Um, it'd be like 3 days before I'd hear from him, and then all of a sudden, it was like, oh, and then it was a dozen questions, and then, all right, let me and the family talk about these photos and this and that, and then
Yeah.
and I sent her, you know, several different snakes, and he'd ask about this one, get on more for it, and it was just back like literally for a month. And I mean, and I'm like, but I felt like this dude was gonna buy, and he did buy, just not with me.
Sure.
Like he come one day, just all of a sudden, he's like, you know, I know you put a lot of work in, and I said I was gonna buy with you, but I just gotta got a deal I couldn't pass up, and we bought that snake. So I said, okay, you know what? What I wanted to say, was a whole lot. Let me tell you what I wanted to say, right? And I did. I went out and I freaking went behind the connexes at work, and because this one frustrated me, and I let out a whole lot of explicitives, and everything.
You threw them in the draft, deleted, and then
and then I forgot, let it go in the wind. And then I took some deep breaths and I looked at the sun, and I was like, all right, I'm good. And then I walked back in and then it's gone. Like I literally, until you're like sitting here asking me about it, I don't even think about it. Like it was not a thought until you asked me to bring it up specifically, right? It's how irrelevant it is once I figured out that if I process one that makes me feel that way, cool, go out, freaking take care of it, and then let it go and then move on, forget about it, right? Learn the lesson from it, but don't dwell on it. Don't dwell on it. The other side of it, guys, if you count your chickens before they hatch, you will constantly set yourself up for disappointment 100% of the time.
So what are some of the W's? Like what's a major W, or like I guess for a new seller, probably like what's a situation that you saw maybe not as being a sale but turned around being a sale?
I think one of my first big wins was I had a customer and they, come in, they asked all my questions, or answered all my questions. Very nice. They were like, I want to be $1,000 or less. I want to be, small as possible. This is little male. I just want to dip my toes in the water, right? And I was like, okay, but there was nothing in the talks of like later on of like, boom, I want, maybe in the future I'll think of breeding. I didn't get that from it's just I just want this pet, right? That's all it was. So, and they bought a $750, very high percentage wild type het purple, I think, right? Wild type het purple. Nothing is gorgeous. I mean, like very cool looking wild type. One of those that was just a little bit unique, just stood out from the crowd, Yeah. But very small, nice high percentage. They had it for about 2 months. They come back and they're like, hey, Joe, like, what's up? And they're like, we want to buy some females. I was like, okay. They're like, I was like, similar questions. I was like, obviously we already know it's female. Like, what do you want to breed? Are you trying to breed it with that male, or are we going to look for a male in the future? Because honestly, he's not the best thing for breeding. He's a wild type, it's that purple. I mean, we can definitely take advantage of it. But what's your goal? What's your budget? They come back and they're like, okay, we really like this, this, and this. And it wasn't like, I mean, like cheap morphs. And our budget's $10,000. It went from like, and they're like, I want, 2 to 4 animals and let's pick them out. It was like my first realization with this customer for me when I was newly selling of like, in reality, you need to, like, it was that kind of click moment of like, everyone gets treated the exact same.
Yep.
And that is as if everybody has $1 million to spend with me, right? And then once you tell me you don't, that doesn't diminish, right? I do think that some people, take that question and they're like, oh, well, then this is, the level of respect that I'm going to get in this transaction. It's like, guys, the base level is set. The standard is high. All right. The standard is high for everyone, right? The reason that the guy that 60 is going to drop 60,000 with me gets that extra is because the standard is high for everyone. And then if you're going to be above the standard, right, I'm going to treat you above the standard like there's extra stuff to do there. But I want, everybody to feel like they're here, 100, everyone, right? Like that's the difference. Like treat everyone like they have $1 million to spend with you out the gate. You start with that, you get them to where they're comfortable. They don't feel uncomfortable answering $1. You know, money's just one of those things that people are just so uncomfortable talking about, you know. And especially with a salesperson, I don't know if you know this, but salespeople are like the second most, you know, like I said before, they're like the third most least trusted person in in any industry.
Yeah. No, I
So
totally agree.
you're combating that. And now you're right now, like in this current economy, you're combating inflation. Freaking, it's insane. If you're not realizing, if you're not looking at those things, if you're not realizing and keeping up with stuff like that, the fact that it's almost, what was the math I seen the other day? Like almost $6,000 more a year to buy the same groceries you bought like 2 years ago. And now you're asking someone to give up this money, right?
Yeah.
You got to give them everything. You know, you got to give them everything, and they should be treated like that, because in an economy where it's like sucks to fucking eat healthy because it's so expensive, they're literally asking for an expensive pet, right?
Yeah.
You got to give them. To me, that alone means that they're owed a 5-star experience. You know, and you give them that.
I totally agree. We're coming down towards the end here. We have a couple Patreons.
I thought you were worried that we weren't going to get to this far.
hey, you know,
you're doing great, Nathan.
Like I said, I'm not a big chatter, but when it comes to something I'm passionate about, I'll start letting loose. But you know, we have some Patreon submitted questions, and I kind of want to rapid fire to them to you, and just kind of see what your responses are. So we have Alessa. She actually purchased one of my favorite snakes, a purple albino that says poop on the back. But she asks, how do you handle a customer who thinks they want snake A, but who really seems like a better match for snake B?
So with that, right, that's where those questions come in. You figure out what you ask what they're looking for, you get that feel for it, and then, you know, I send people over now, like, especially if we're using Morph Market, I'm like, hey, like, filter it, look at it. This puts a little more in your control. And then, or I'm like, hey, all right, what is it that you want? Let me make you that personalized availability list. And then you don't flood them with every option. 3 to 5 pictures, 3 to 5 different snakes max, right?
I think that's a great way.
That's why I don't give them an entire availability. Do you know how many snakes we had last year?
I don't.
My total number was over 500 snakes. Last year. Do you think if I gave you an availability list, somebody's head's going to explode, right? Yeah. But because this is what I do, this is why I'm a professional at this. This is what I do is I've figured out, like, you ask those 5 questions, right? Then you figure out if you have to dig a little deeper, right? Figure out, like, okay, why do you want really high percentage, but your budget's 600? You know, generally, like, I know the answer is going to be, I want the smallest thing possible. Okay, well, let me tell you why. This is where the conversation happens. Then, and that conversation builds that trust. Then you're able, if you can build that trust, then you can tell them, like, I know you really want this. I've got this that's very similar, right? This is not, you know, this isn't going to hit it's going to hit your budget, but it's not going to hit your size range, right? You want something under 10 feet. This is 10 to 12, but it fits your budget. You go 250 over your budget, I have it in the 8 to 10 foot range, right? So now this is why, right? But you have to give them that explanation, and it all boils down to all the stuff that we talked about as far as building relationships and customer service, you know, before. Okay. That's how you do it. You know, you need to be the one assessing what their wants are, what their needs are, and then go meet it. But limit their options, because if you give them too many, you will absolutely flood their brain, and then you'll lose the sale because they won't know what to pick.
Okay. So Darren asks, he's from Rubber City Royals. He's asking, we all love Darren, but how do you move forward with people who see similar animals? And I feel like we've talked about this a little bit, but similar animals at lower prices elsewhere. And how do you convince them of the additional value and the higher priced animal that you're offering?
So we definitely, I get where his question's coming from, because we definitely set a standard, a certain standard for pricing within the industry. There's no doubt about that, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, and there's, I've talked with a lot of them. They're like, I don't want to undercut you. Too bad, and then others just will. Here's the reality. A lot of it boils down to the same thing I just kind of talked about within the previous. Can you provide that value? Can you provide what they're looking for? Is that $200 difference worth the fact of when you start breeding, right? There's a guarantee behind our name, right? There just is. We guarantee genetics, and if something goes wrong, I mean, Garrett fixes it. It doesn't matter. It's happened to me. And one of the first snakes, probably within the first 3 or 4 I bought. I thought I bought a pure Anery Calatoa. Something happened. Turned out it was 87.5%. In order to make it up, like, Garrett did everything back then because the genetics were wrong from what he guaranteed me they were. It wasn't his fault, but he did that. So if your breeder is not able to offer you that guarantee, right, and something goes wrong, cool. Like, then just know you're gonna have to, you own that, right? And at the savings of say $200, you now own it, and it's all on you, And then you have, what if it doesn't prove head Anery? You've sold everything. You got an Eric Lee situation where he went back and had to do everything he could to make it right. And stuff, and still had people that were angry with him, and that sucks. And am I frozen on your end? I'm just curious.
Your audio's coming through fine, but your video is frozen for a little bit.
I don't understand. Stop it. But, so you got that situation, right? Like, so you make them, you give them an explanation and an understanding as to why your prices are where you're at and what you offer at that higher price. And then give them the choice, just put it in their hands. Don't, that's what I do anyway. And you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. And the ones that you're going to win are the customers that you want. And the ones that you're going to lose are probably the customers you really don't want, because those are the type of customers. If the only thing you're looking for is the absolute bottom dollar, then those are your problem customers. Those are the ones that are like, I mean, literally my easiest sales are sales that are 5 figures. Those people, I tell, if it's $15,000 stake and I tell you, all right, I need 15 grand. Cool. Yeah. I'll only send that right over. No problem. You can ship it to me whenever. It's fine. Doesn't
That's what
bother
I've
me.
noticed as well.
The friggin' one, the one that's $750 in, right? They're different.
No,
right? But here's what you got to understand:
that's wild type. I get it.
But you got to understand that dude that's got 15 grand to spend on a snake. You really think, like, I mean, if it lost 15 grand for some reason, some way, somehow, it still hurts. But I bet he's got it. You know what I'm saying? That person that scraped everything. That person that scraped everything though to save up because they believe in your company, they believe in what you've put out, and they believe in your, what you're doing, and they've scraped. That $750 means so much more to them than $15,000. So that's why you have to get that. The reality is you're going to have so many more customers that are going to come around that are going to spend $750. They're so important in the way you take care of them. $15,000 customers are also extremely important in how you take care of them, but you take care of them differently because you can.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
So the reality is I think, lay it out to them. Be honest, be transparent. Here's the why. Don't try and bullshit them because customers smell bullshit immediately. Give them the honest and transparent answer. Here's the why, and you can make the choice, and you're not going to upset me. That family that came back and said, I said, you know what? I hope you enjoy it. They sent me a picture. I'm like, that's a beautiful snake. You guys have a great day. I said, if you ever decide to second one, I hope I can get your business, next time,
Absolutely.
And then that L just went away, big deal, and move on.
Okay, so our last two, and we kind of need to rapid fire because we need to stay under 2 hours for just editing purposes. What
Yeah.
snake, and this is back from Alessa, what snake, if any, do you regret selling, either a personal animal or for Reach Out Reptiles?
It was a personal animal. It's real easy. You remember the male I kept off of our pair? I sold it.
Okay.
Annery, Golden Child, Sunfire Platinum, 100% head albino. I shot my mouth off. Like, didn't think, and it was a dumb number. And they're like, yep, I want it. And I was like, you're serious? And he's like, yeah. And he sent me the cash, and I honored my word. I really wish I'd have had him for breeding, but he's got him, and he just made some beautiful snakes with him.
Okay, that's cool to hear that the next generation of those animals, I mean, especially being produced in the room behind me, that's a cool feeling, even though you didn't do it. I know I'm trying to do something with them this year. So
I've still got the female, and she ain't going nowhere though. So
good.
So I'm still gonna do something with her. Don't worry.
Okay.
I still got a little bit of it.
keep her close, because we have another year on her.
Yeah.
All right. So St. J is asking, what have you found to be, and I feel like I know the answer because this is probably going to be a little bit different for Reach Out Reptiles than the average reptile seller. But what have you found is the best way to reach customers? Morph market, referrals, ads, etc.
So referrals, word of mouth, and that that's where it definitely comes in of giving them an experience. That's your best and your least expensive way of doing it, right? 100%. Past that, Morph Market is great because it just offers a central location. People know it, they go there. Doing stuff though with the Instagram and everything is another one. I think if
Instagram
you're not utilizing
and YouTube
everything,
for you guys is.
I think if you're not utilizing that, now TikTok, we're trying to do more with it, and some, you got to figure out what your audience is for each and cater to it. But word of mouth by far is my favorite. That includes stuff where you're doing paid advertisements too with other people in the industry, say that trust. One of our big ones is we've sent Clint, a couple of snakes, and he does a shout out, and then anyone that tells me, hey, I came from Clint's Reptiles, guess what? You get 10% off, right? Automatically, because we love Clint. That's the deal we worked. Where I'm like, if your people, that trust you and love you, and you tell them to come here, and they come here because they trust and love you, I will absolutely give them 10% off every time. Right?
Yeah, I think word of mouth and word of mouth,
because it's word of mouth, and that's what's comfortable for people. It just holds the most truth.
It's still the most powerful form of advertising, and I know that all too well.
100%.
Yeah, look, Joe, I think I've asked you everything I could today. I'm sure there's some stuff that are gonna be eaten away at me after we end this recording, but dude,
may just have to do a part 2 then. I don't know.
Exactly. I'm not afraid to have you back.
Do it down the road.
Yeah. So, dude, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to sit down with me, even though it's just me and you, no Lucas today. Thank you for all the support and mentorship, all the stuff you've offered in terms of us both growing up in this retic industry. That support's not something I take lightly. So thanks for being a homie. Thanks for coming on tonight, man.
So 100%, man. It's been a blast. I've enjoyed it. So hey, thanks for having me, and we'll catch you guys later.
All right, cool. I'm gonna wrap us up. If you want to sit in the back and chat for a second after, that's totally fine. This is also your opportunity. If you need to go on, do stuff throughout your night, you can. So guys, thanks for another just awesome episode of the Retic Lounge. I feel like this is kind of getting back to the roots and just educational stuff surrounding retics, surrounding the sales of, you're in your first year of breeding retics, breeding reptiles. There's definitely bits of gold in this recording. So listen carefully to Joe's words of advice. Again, thank you for being a part of the Retic Lounge. If you want extra Retic Lounge, we're over at patreon.com/the Retic Lounge. That gives you access to early access, our Zoom meetings, and then also our Discord, which is super active. We have some great people over there. So join on up, but we'll see you on 99. Later, guys.